Okay, we're going to count this as part 2 for trig function exams. This is grade 10. So it's trig functions, and yeah, we'll call this an exam lesson. So this paper is taken from November, if I'm not mistaken. No, September. September 2025. So this is the exact paper they wrote last year. We're going to say in the diagram below, there's a graph of f of x, which is that one. Okay. So f of x is this graph. Just by looking at this formula, I already know that the minus means it's a reflection, and the 2 means it got amplitude of 2. The x number in front of x is 1x, so the period is probably 360, and there's no up and down shift. Now, if I look at g of x, which is here, I can see that g of x is generally a normal graph. Firstly, the amplitude is 1 because the number in front of sine is 1. That means the max is 1. And the shift, the graph shifts 1 unit up. So generally, it is an easy graph. Let's start. What is the amplitude of f? Well, the amplitude of f is 2 because it's the number in front of the cos graph. But even if you didn't want that, you can measure this part and this part, sorry guys, and this part is 2. And if you didn't want to do that, you could have said max plus min divided by 2. So the maximum would be 2, or max minus 1 actually, but yeah. 2 minus 2 divided by 2, and that equals to 2. But generally, the amplitude is the number in front of the cosine and tan. What is the period of g? Now, guys, for the period, we need to understand that the period of a graph is how long it takes to complete one full cycle. Whether it's this, it doesn't matter. But a shortcut for grade 11 trig and grade 12 trig is the period is always equal to 360 divided by k. Now this k value, it's just a letter. It doesn't matter what letter you use. But this is the number in front of x. So if we look at it, the number in front of x is 1. So 360 divided by 1 is 360. And that's all there is to this question, 360. The minimum value of g of x minus 1. Now, guys, questions like this is quite simple. Realistically, it doesn't take a lot of effort. We're going to go to g of f. We're going to look at it and we're going to shift it down. Okay. So at the moment, the minimum point of g of x is 0. Right? Now, there's no need for us to panic. G of x has a minimum point of 0. Now, if I minus 1 from the minimum point, my minimum point is going to be minus 1. Because at the moment, this is the minimum point of g of x, which is 0. And then when I minus 1, yeah, it goes there. Determine the value of f of 180 minus g of 180. Okay, cool. Now this seems like it's difficult. Maybe not. But the truth is, generally, questions like this only seem difficult. Once you understand it, it's fine. Let's go to the F graph, which is the yellow graph. Look at 180. And if I go to the F graph, at 180, I think my point is 2. There's the 180 point that's here. So my point's 2. Let's go to g of 180. Well, at g of 180, the point here is most likely 1. Remember, guys, we're talking in terms of the y. There's it here. It was 2. It was 1. And they wanted f minus g. So 2 minus 1. And that just equals to 1. The answer is 1. So whenever you have these type of questions, look at this. There's no calculations needed. This is where you look at the graph. Now again, these questions are level 4. And generally, most people struggle. Okay? But I need you to understand something. When it comes to questions like this, I would like you to look at the x. I would like you to look at the y values, calculate with the y values, but give your answers in terms of x. So everything you calculate here is in terms of y values. Now, you see this point for 5.3. It says, I want the g graph multiplied by the f graph must make it equal to 0, or it must be equal to a negative number. Because it must be less than or equal to 0. Now, what does that mean? Guys, before we even start, how do we get a negative number? How do we get a negative number? To get a negative number, we need to have a minus multiplied by a positive, or a positive multiplied by a minus. So we just need one graph to be above the x-axis, one graph to be below the x-axis. So let's go. Let's look at this, right? I'm removing all of this nonsense. Now, all we need is we need either the yellow graph to be below the x-axis or above, right? So there's the yellow graph. That's fine. There's the blue graph. That's fine as well. And now, guys, we give the answers in terms of x, but we pay attention according to y. All of the stuff we deal with is according to y, right? So pay attention to the y value. Now let's start, right? They want g of x times f of x. The only time we would get a negative answer if one is positive and one is negative. So look at all of this. This is all negative values. And then look at all of this. This is positive value. So that's the part I'm exactly looking for. This part, this is what I'm looking for. So one of my answers could be when x is less than or equal to 90, but greater than or equal to 0. Why am I including equal to? It's because they also included equal to. They wanted equal to 0, so it's fine. See, at this point, guys, I'm going to remove this, but you can learn with it. At this point that I'm about to highlight, this is 0. X is 0, or y is 0 technically. So 0 times anything is 0. So at this point, the yellow graph is negative times this is positive. Now, if you still don't understand, pick any point from where I scratched out. This is negative 1. That's negative 1, and that's like 1.5 as an example. If you multiply these two, you will get a negative answer. So that's what I was looking for. Now, where else can this happen? From this point here. This is negative, and that's positive. So, again, negative times positive gives you negative. So my answer is or 270 less than x, which is less than or equal to 360. Now again, I understand. I 100% understand that this part is difficult. But with a bit of practice, I'm sure you guys got it. As long as we understand the theory behind it, the rest of it is quite simple. But if you don't, then we're in trouble. But anyway, determine the range of this question, right? They said determine the range of h of x if h of x is minus g of x plus 3. Now, guys, let's start off with g of x. G of x is equal to sine x plus 1. That's the normal g of x graph. Now, h of x is going to equal to something else. See, h of x is firstly where we're going to get a minus. So there's some sort of reflection. So that's going to be minus sine x minus 1, because I'm going to distribute that minus. Thereafter, they told us to plus 3, plus 3. So most of the time, they would ask for the formula. But in this question, h of x is not asking for the formula. They want the range. And this is plus 2. Right? Because minus 1, plus 2. Now, realistically, the range of this graph was 2 and 0. So 0 to 2. Okay, cool. So look at the blue graph. Realistically, the lowest point was 0. The highest point was 2. So the old graph, I just want to show you guys, the g of x graph had a range starting at 0 and ending at 2. But the h of x graph is up by 1 unit. So the range is 1 plus 1 to both of them and going to 3. So 0 plus 1 is 1 and 2 plus 1 is 3. And that's all there is to this question. Now, it might seem like it's difficult, but that's also because you guys didn't practice level 4 questions. So all we need is a little bit of effort this time on these questions and be good.
Why is it?
Okay, so one of my students asked me a question now. Generally, it was a good question. So my student just asked me for the last question for 5.4. You see, she asked me why didn't I plus 2? So g of x was already this. This was g of x, okay? You can see. That's g of x. Now, h of x, even though it's a whole lot of nonsense and calculations, it's plus 2. So she asked, why didn't I plus 2? You see, g of x was already at plus 1 units. It wasn't a standard graph. It was already moved up 1 units. So the difference between moving up 1 unit and moving up 2 units is only 1 unit. That's why I plus 1, is because I'm comparing the difference between h of x and g of x. Now, g of x had a graph, a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 2. H of x, which is only 1 unit bigger than g of x, so I'm going to plus 1 to both sides. But that's all there is. Okay, guys, the next one is from September 2024. Okay. This is same KZN. Let's try and do 3 papers. It would be good. I'll try for 4, but I do have the 2018 series of papers already loaded. So yeah, we got a sine graph, we got a tan graph. They gave us a restriction. Write down the period of G. Now, guys, the period of G, the tan graph period is always 180, unless there's a problem. But generally, tan always has a period of 180. You just have to memorize that. Write down the range of F. Now, without even looking at F, we know that the amplitude, is 2. Okay. We know in general, actually, we can draw this graph. You can actually put it into the calculator. I think for you guys, without understanding it, put it into the calculator. Press mode, press table, press 2, sine x, close bracket, plus 1. G of x is there. We're going to start at 0, end at 270. Now, normally for sine graphs, we step in 30s. The problem is we have a tan graph, and tan graph only step in 45s. So most likely you're going to have to step in 45. Now go and look. We can say y is the element of square brackets. Look for the lowest value, which is minus 1. and look for the highest value of y, which is 3. And that's the answer. Okay. On the same set of axes, they want us to draw this graph. Okay. Generally, generally, I would draw it quite simply, but it's not going to be so easy with my tablet. But let's go for it. Let's try either way. Okay. So this is, let's go 45, 90, 135, 180, 225, and 270. Now, when it comes to a tan graph, we should have asymptotes at 90 and 270. And if you don't, most likely you did something wrong. Okay. Now, if we start with our points, I think generally that's 1, 2, 3. Generally, 1, 2, 3, that's -1, -2, -3. This should be easy. I'm going to try. 0 and let's pick green. Okay. 0 and 1. 45 and 2 point some change. 4. 90 and 3. And it should go back down. Remember, each part has a counterpart. I did that in one of the videos before. But yeah. It stops there. Now, this is a very funny graph because it technically stops at 270 because they cut it off at 270. But please don't think that the period of this graph is 270. No, it's the range that we drew it in. I use the word range, but it's the restriction that we drew it in with 0 to 270 that caused it to look like this. But the period of this graph is still 360. The only way to get a period of the graph is to look at the x. If it's 1x, it's 360. If it's 2x, you divide by 2. 3x, you divide by 3. And we continue. But the same thing with the tan graph. If I deal with the tan graph, this is a very basic tan graph. This is a really, really basic tan graph, so I don't think any of you would have a problem. But 0 and 0, and 45 and 1, and that's all I know. And then -135 and -1, 0, and there, and that's at 1. And my graph generally should look like that and should look like that. I'm not going to label it because you guys should know which is the tan and the sin graph, but okay, let me label it just in case I have some faulty students. But generally, please use a pen, pencil, use a ruler and deal with it. But this is not level 4. That's 3 marks. Determine the values of x for which g of x is greater than or equal to 0. Now, g of x is the tan graph. And the tan graph is only greater than 0 from here. And from here, that's the only place where the tan graph is greater than 0. So how I write it is that x is less than 90. It's not equal to 90, right? Because the tan graph will never ever touch 90 and greater than or equal to 0. And if you don't know how to write it, you can write x is an element of 0 to 90, right? You can use interval notation. But also, x is less than 270. A tan graph will never touch 270 and greater than or equal to 180. But again, if you don't know how to write this, and as long as you know what's included, what's not included, it's very simple for us to do scientific notation. Yeah. And this is the end of this question. Generally, I think the rest is 2D trig, but we can move on to one more paper. Okay, guys. This next one is from November 2025. This is the final year paper, so it should be good. We got two graphs, g of x and we got f of x. We got our restriction, right? These graphs, I prefer stepping in 30th. Generally, I prefer stepping in 30th. But I mean, if they give you a grid and it's in 45s, then step in 45s. It doesn't matter, right? To put this into the calculator, we would go mode. You would go with table. You would put in the answer. Now, guys, the truth is, I understand that you can put in both graphs at the same time. And if you're confident in your calculator work, then go for it, 100%. I don't have a problem with it. But if you're not, do it one at a time, just so you don't confuse yourself and just so you don't lose marks. So we'll say the g of x doesn't matter, right? But we'll say f of x equals 2, and you can put in one of the graphs, whether it's sine cos x plus 1, whether it's 2 sine x, either one. We would start at 0, we would end at 360. We'll step in 45s because their grid is in 45s, and we'll start to plot the points. The thing is, I'm going to save time, and I'm going to take it directly from the marking guideline because the graph is very neat, and it's difficult for me to draw on my graphic tablet, but it's also a very easy graph. We did multiple of this, so you guys should be good with it, but this is what the graph would look like. We can see for the fact which is g and which is there we can see that this is the g of x graph. It's labeled, and this is the f of x graph, right? If you guys can label, it will be very good. If not, I mean, doesn't really hurt, but okay. So we got 4 marks for free, right? Write down the period of g. Guys, again, the period of the graph will be the value in front of x divided. So we're going to take period is equal to 360 divided by the value in front of x. Now, if we go to the f graph, the number in front of x is 1. It's an invisible 1. So the period is just 360 degrees, right? The range of g, guys, the range is the y values. So y is the element of, and all we have to do is look at the range. The lowest value of the g graph is, if I'm not mistaken, 0. The biggest value is 2. So the range is the lowest to the biggest, 0, 2. That's all. The next one. Now, this this doesn't seem like a fun question, but generally, it's not level 4 as well. These types of questions is where you look at the graph. You look for your answer. You don't go and physically have to go and calculate everything. In this question, it's a little bit difficult. We multiply by 3. So we end up with g of x minus f of x equals to 3. Now let's look where we can take the g graph. Let me go and color it so maybe it would be easier for you guys to see, right? The yellow graph is the g graph. Now let's look where we can take the yellow graph minus the non-color graph. Let's make it blue, right? The non-highlighted graph. Let's make it blue. Okay, so we're going to take the g graph, the yellow graph. We're going to minus the blue graph, and it must give me 3. Let's try, right? Let's take this point here. Okay, at 90, the blue graph is 2. I mean, the yellow graph is 2. Minus the blue graph is 1 because I'm talking about the y values. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So that doesn't work out. Nope. Let's take 180. At 180, the yellow graph is 0 minus the blue graph is 0. And that doesn't work out. Nope. Let's try 0. At x equals to 0, The yellow graph is 2, the blue graph is 0. So 2 minus 0 is 2. Close, but that doesn't work out. Let's try another point. Let's try here. I know what the answer is, but I'm trying to get you guys to see. At 360, 2 minus 0 is 2, so that doesn't work out. But guys, when we start to look at this value, we see 270. Now it changes. Because at 270, we got a value of 1 minus a minus 2, which equals to 3. And that's all there is to this part. 3. So the answer is x equals to 270. And yeah, that's all there is to this question. And I think the next one is also generally easy, not too bad, but let's leave this as homework and then add it to the, with our luck, this one might just come out. So anyway, let's go with it. This is November 2024. Okay, this is November 2024. Okay, guys. Determine the values of P and Q. Okay. So guys, even without panicking, quite simply, P is the sine graph, which is this graph here. Okay. P is the sine graph, which is this graph. And the next graph, the blue graph, is of course that one. Now guys, you and I can just focus on most of everything, to be honest. The P part is the amplitude. Let's go and look for the amplitude of the yellow graph. So for the amplitude, I would take positive 2. So for amplitude, I just taught you guys. Take the max minus the min and divide by 2. So the max is 2 minus the min is minus 2. And that equals to divide by 2. And that equals to 2. So the amplitude of this graph is 2. Even if you didn't know that, you could measure from year to year, and you could see that this is 2 units. What is the Q value? The shift of the graph. So if you memorized your cos graph, a cos graph was supposed to have minus 180. So if you put shift, if you're putting into the calculator cos of 180, you're going to get minus 1. So this point here at 180, that's what I normally do, guys, to find the shift, is it was supposed to be here. So this shifted up by 1 unit. So Q is plus 1. And that's all there is to this graph. What is the amplitude of G? Very easy. The amplitude of G is 1. Why? Because the number in front of cos is 1. So that's all it is. Write down the range. Range is Y is the element of. And let's go to the F graph. The F graph is the yellow one. The lowest point is minus 2, and the highest point is 2. I know I'm working fast with this, but I am doing it on purpose because I can generally see it's not too bad. For which values would of x will f of x be greater than 0? Now f of x is the yellow graph, guys. And where is it bigger than 0? The only place it's bigger than 0 is here. All of this. Now, it did not say equal to, so don't get caught. So this would be x. You could put x as the element of, and we could put circle brackets, not included, 0 to 180. But if you understand interval notation, and if you understand how to deal with it the other way, x is less than 180, but x is greater than 0. Remember, it's not included because they didn't ask for equal to 0. This is not equal to, it's there. Now, the last question, very simply, the G graph. What is the G graph? Okay, so the G graph is equal to cos x plus 1. They said the G graph is reflected about the x-axis. So if it's reflected on the x-axis, the y value changes. So I know this is minus g of x equals to cos x plus 1. And then shifted 2 units upwards. Okay, cool. So let's deal with this first. So if I divide by minus 1 and I divide by minus 1, I get g of x equals to minus cos x minus 1. So it's shifted across the x-axis. This is the x-axis shift. Now it is shifted up by 2 units. So if I plus 2 there, my h of x graph is just minus cos x plus 1. And that's all there is to this question. And that should be the end of it.